I do like the disclaimer up front that said
started with our council meeting, starting a little early tonight, so we'll go with council follow-up. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, good evening, everybody. I don't think I have anything for this particular portion of the agenda this evening.
Okay. All right, then will anybody else have anything from the last meeting? No? All right. We'll go to landlord utility agreement ordinance modifications. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our finance services director, who of course oversees customer service and utility billing and so on, has been working really closely with the attorney's office to modify the agreement that we have with our landowners. We wanted to run some ideas by you in terms of changes and so forth. And so if I could defer to Ms. Johnson for that to start us, and of course the attorney's office can feel free to step in and offer comment as well.
Okay, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I did want to kind of draw your attention to the landlord agreement, because that's kind of what the catalyst was for doing this whole change in the ordinance. As is mentioned in the ordinance, section 13.03.070, item D, discontinuance of services, it references the landlord agreement. It really doesn't talk about what the landlord agreement is. So whenever a property owner rents out their property and the tenant moves out, if there isn't a landlord agreement in place, then we disconnect the services, the utility services. However, we've given the landowners an opportunity to sign up for a program, which is through our landlord agreement, which says if a tenant moves out, then instead of disconnecting the services, we'll just transfer them automatically into your name. So this is a voluntary program. It's not required. They can sign up for it or not, as is their choice. And if we look at the differences in the landlord agreement, because we did actually update it quite a bit. So the old landlord agreement, Krista, we'll put that on the screen, maybe. So the old landlord agreement was very simple. It had just the property owner's name, it had the property address, and the account number. It gave the owner the option of transferring at the time of the tenant moving out or the tenant not paying their bill. Well, nobody ever checked the one where you could transfer it when somebody didn't pay their bill, so we decided to take that off. In addition, at the bottom, it had to be notarized. And that caused a little bit more effort for somebody to actually sign up for the program. And we didn't want that either. So we took that off of the new form. So if we go to the new form, please. Let's scroll to the second page. With our new accounting system, we actually have the ability to capture a lot more information. So we are able to capture not only the property owner's information, but if they have a property manager, we can collect that as well. And then if we look at the third document, Krista, we can also, if they have multiple properties, we can list all of these properties that are associated with that one owner. So it really gives us a lot more information and an ability to work with our owners a little bit better on their rental properties. So we did a mass mailing of these new landlord agreements out to our owners. And we have approximately 478 landlords that we are aware of. And out of that, those landlords manage approximately 1,057 properties. And we have about 72% that are taking advantage of this program. So it is important to them. With the updating of the form, we also did look at the ordinance. We made some very minor changes to the ordinance. We did change from the administrative services to the financial services department. That was a change that was made a couple years ago. And in addition to that, the city no longer restores services after hours. So we removed that from the ordinance because it was not applicable anymore. But they were fairly minor changes, and that's really all we did. Did you all have any questions regarding this?
Anybody have any questions? I guess not.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You need direction on that, Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with the council, then we'll go ahead and prepare the appropriate ordinance for change and bring it forward for formal consideration and go from there.
Okay, we good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to WCDA CDBG program. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, we've been talking, albeit informally, for the last several weeks with respect to the role that you will now play as it relates to a sponsor / administrator of the CDBG program, which has been newly placed, if you will, with the WCDA. And even though the WCDA is sort of the administrator, if you will, of these funds and this program, the City Council will still have a role by virtue of determining not only whether or not you will be a sponsor, if you will, of the applications and so forth that come forward for your consideration, but as well as serving as somewhat of an administrator also, in the sense that a program gets awarded by WCDA, the City Council, the City of Casper, will ultimately be sort of the facilitator of those funds and you know, provide some oversight with regard to how those dollars are used, should those dollars be awarded. And so we asked WCDA to come in tonight and discuss with us what it is that they expect to see in terms of dollars that they will ultimately choose to award or not award. However, I'd like you to pay strict attention to what it is that they would like to see from the City of Casper as it relates to our role once those dollars are awarded, and you know, the accountabilities, as it were, will be anticipated through the city. This will be different than when the city used to oversee the program directly, but there will also be a lot of consistencies with regard to you know, some of the things that we tend to look for. And so with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'd like you to tune in again as to what it is that they'd like to see from the City of Casper. And then I'd like to have some sort of debriefing comments with you, if I could, after the WCDA's presentation. That's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds like this is on, yes?
It is.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is John Beatty. I am the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development for WCDA. I've been in that position since 2016. So at the invitation of your city manager, come tonight to talk to you about the CDBG program a little bit, just to give you kind of a 30,000-foot kind of view of the CDBG program from the start. It was originally enacted back in 1974 as part of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. That created the the entitlement program, which is essentially the CDBG program that you guys were participating in at one point in time. It's for local governments, not states, it's for cities and counties, other units of local government. The CDBG state program came along about 7 years later in 1981. And that program is specifically for states, and that is intended to serve those communities within individual states that aren't directly served by the CDBG entitlement program, right? So we serve those communities in Wyoming that are not entitlement communities, and right now that means everywhere outside of the city, the incorporated boundaries of the city of Cheyenne, right? Yeah, that's kind of how the CDBG program came about. It was created originally to combine a bunch of different programs, housing and community development related programs that HUD had. I think it was around 11 that got combined into the single CDBG program. And it's essentially, they try to remove as many strings as they could, which is an amazing act for the federal government, and try and create a program where they took money in blocks, right, block grant, and gave it to communities with as few strings as possible, and let communities kind of design their own programs and their own activities to best meet their own community development needs, which actually sounds like a really good idea. And for the most part, it is. It's worked really well. It's HUD's longest running formula grant program, so that has to mean something, right? So at the federal level, there are 3 national objectives that every CDBG program has to meet. And those are, 1, you have to either provide a direct or area benefit to low and moderate income persons. And low and moderate income persons are defined as 80% AMI and below. Is everyone familiar with the concept of AMI? Is that something that area median income? Yeah. So it has to serve those area median income populations either through an area benefit, looking at a geographic area, or through an individual benefit like a means tested, income tested household. The second objective that it has to meet is it has to aid in the prevention of slum or blight conditions within a community. So that's the second condition. And then the third condition that a CDBG program has to meet at the national level, it has to meet a particular urgent need, urgent community need. And that's really relating to disasters and disaster mitigation, not a commonly used criteria under the CDBG program. So mostly what we'll be dealing with in CDBG on a day-to-day basis will be that direct or area benefit to low income persons, or the prevention or elimination of slum and blight conditions. Yes. So those are the federal sort of objectives that every CDBG program or project has to meet. There's a state level objectives that WCDA has chosen to initiate at the state level, and these are reflective of WCDA's mission, right? So WCDA is the state's housing finance authority, and so our primary mission is concerned with residential development, right? CDBG is a community development block grant program, not always focused on residential sort of functions, but we as WCDA have to maintain that sort of residential focus, right? So we at the state level sort of set up 6 state level objectives that each project that's submitted through us would have to meet. And I won't go through all those in detail, but just suffice to say that we're interested in providing housing for special population groups like the elderly, persons with disabilities, domestic violence victims, homeless persons, etc. We are interested in the development of emergency shelters and transitional housing facilities that prevent or engage persons that are homeless or at risk of being homeless. We're interested in engaging and expanding the provision of public services in the community. So public services are things like health clinics, things of a service nature that are generally speaking available to the general public. And then we're interested in the renovation and improvement of substandard housing for both low and moderate income occupants, owner occupants, and renters. 5, we're interested in encouraging the provision of affordable housing through the acquisition or improvement of land. So if you have land that is sitting unimproved, needs utilities, needs infrastructure, that's what we're interested in doing. And then finally, we're interested in increasing the efficiency, the energy efficiency of public infrastructure and public facilities. So if you have a public facility that you want to do some energy efficiency measures on, a community center, a rec center, or something of that nature, you want to do energy efficiency improvements, that's what we're looking to do. So those are kind of our state level objectives. As I mentioned, WCDA is a housing agency, so any kind of public improvements or public infrastructure that we do, like things like water and sewer line extensions, sidewalks, roads, curb and gutter, any kind of public improvements or public facilities just need to service either a residential neighborhood or a mixed-use neighborhood. We just can't do anything that serves purely commercial neighborhoods or commercial districts alone. But I think even downtown Casper has these same elements, so I think you'll be okay in that respect, right? Right, okay, so the city manager did a great job, like I said, in kind of setting the background, the basis for the program. We do actually have a few requirements for the program in terms of how you apply and whatnot. We've just passed our first sort of application window, and when I say we, it's not just me running the program, of course. I'm here with Casey Hurlis, who is our Neighborhood Project Specialist 1. So Casey is the person that you'll probably be dealing with the most often, either Casey or her immediate coworker, Michael Bland. Those are the two CDBG staff that we have at WCDA. Those are the people you'll be dealing with most often. You probably won't see me ever again unless there's a huge problem, right? And so hopefully that's never the case. Right, they'll be the ones that you deal with on a daily basis, and they're great. They've been going all around the state and doing a great job of promoting the program. So very happy with that. Just some basics about the application process as we've had it set out so far. The WCDA has created something called the method of distribution for a CDBG program, and that just essentially lays out the methods and procedures by which we will allocate our CDBG resources. It gives you the allocation criteria, the evaluation criteria, the points, the maximum amounts of grants, what the funding that's available, spells it all out for you in the method of distribution. It's a long document, so there's a lot to go over, but it's available on our website if anyone's interested in reviewing it. Some key points to that method of distribution for this current year is that, as I kind of briefly mentioned, we just passed one of our application sort of thresholds, which was the letters of intent. We require that prospective applicants submit to us a letter of intent that is a basic letter that kind of gives us basic information about the project that you're proposing, some information around your public notice procedures and whatnot. And so we've gotten that information from the city, and so we're good to go in that respect. The next sort of deadline that's coming up on our application cycle is the actual application deadline, and that is due by the end of this month. And so we would need to get your application into our electronic system, uploaded into our electronic system by the end of this month to proceed with an application for this year's cycle. And then once that application is received, we'll do some evaluation of it. We'll do a site visit for any physical locations that are part of that application. We'll do an analysis and underwriting of the application's financial characteristics, take a look at the eligibility of the project that's being proposed, and get that all that information to our board of directors, who will meet in January to review the applications and make funding recommendations based upon staff's recommendation, right? And so at the end of January, if you submitted an application, you will know at that point whether or not you've been funded for the next round. Our current applications have a $500,000 per application limit in terms of CDBG money. We have two sources of funding this round, and I do not remember the amounts that are available, and so hopefully Casey can maybe look that up for me. But we have two sources of funding available this round. We have our traditional CDBG funds, which are regular community development block grant funding that we receive on an annual basis from HUD, and then we also have our CDBG CV, which is our coronavirus money that's been received as part of a special allocation of funding under the coronavirus relief legislation that was passed, I believe, last year. So we have both sources of funding available. There's a $500,000 per limit per project limit for the CDBG funding. There's a $750,000 per project limit for CDBG CV funding. Both funding sources have slightly different eligibility criteria that's all kind of laid out in the method of distribution. But yeah, that's kind of like the basic stuff there. I don't know if you have the dollar amounts available, but it's all laid out in the method of distribution. Thank you. So yeah, between the two funding sources, a little over 12 million out there on the street right now. So we're happy to see that the city is interested in applying for that funding. So I don't know if you've had a chance to hand those out to folks yet or not. Okay, good. So you guys all have a copy of this, which kind of gives you some basic information on the program. Some examples of eligible activities are about 3 pages into this, I believe. So that's a basic idea of what we normally look to fund. And again, it can be CDBG is a great program because it can provide a broad range of different activities. You can do fundings for parks, health clinics, public infrastructure, community centers. Those are kind of the more public service and public infrastructure sorts of activities. There are also eligible activities around housing. You can do minor home repair, which is a big thing actually, because we can't do minor home repair with our other federal grants. If you touch anything with our home program, you have to bring the entire structure up to code. And so that pretty much eliminates any kind of concept of minor home repair working with those funds. But with CDBG, you can do minor home repair. You can do $20,000, $30,000 per household repair programs for your residents. You can set up any kind of purchase assistance program you want to with CDBG, so you can do that as well. Really flexible funding. And you know, in my position, I have to be the sort of and I'm sure your city manager can relate to this, kind of the, you know, the master of none, jack of all trades, master of none. So if you really want a comprehensive list of what you can do and all the details of how it will work out, I will refer you to either Casey or my neighborhood development officer, Michael Bland, who can kind of give you the in-depth run through of what's eligible and what's not. But as far as I go, I can kind of give you the 30,000-foot view, right? I think that's really pretty much all I have for you. You know, there are a couple of peculiar things about the state program that's different than the entitlement program for CDBG. We as states can only grant funds to units of local governments. We can't do loans. We can't do any other forms of financial assistance. It has to be a grant to you guys, so it's going to be free, free money for you guys, which is always good. Yeah, what else as far as the state goes? We can't grant money to nonprofits. We can only do it to units of local government. And then you guys, as units of local government, can either choose to run the programs yourselves, or you can subrecipient it out to a nonprofit or some agency to run it on your behalf. What else? There are other federal cross-cutting requirements that my staff are extremely skilled in, and they will help you go through all of them. I don't want you guys to feel like, oh my gosh, this is federal money and there's so many strings, I don't want to deal with this headache. I hired 2 people to handle those headaches for you. So that's their job. And I warned them at day one that you're going to have to do some hand-holding and, you know, walk people through federal regulations, federal requirements, cross-cutting requirements. And they've been spending the last 6 months doing nothing but learning that stuff. So they are good to go. So I think they'll be great assets to you all. That's all I really had, unless you guys had any questions.
Councilman Nell.
Can you share with us what the responsibility of the city is when we are sponsoring these funds, say for someone that's a nonprofit that's applied for it in our city? In other words, Carter, so that you'll understand, I don't want another CATSI on our hands. So I'm wondering, what is our responsibility or our accountability as the overseer of the program?
Right, yeah, excellent. Good question, good question, yeah. So as far as on the front end, the city will be responsible for conducting some public hearings. So the city will have to conduct public hearings to make sure that the public is aware of the program that you're applying to WCDA for funding for, right? That'll kind of give the citizens an opportunity to comment on that program. Once you've applied and if you're awarded funding, there'll be the execution of a written agreement with WCDA that'll spell out all the requirements that we're looking for from the city. And I'm trying to think right now, talking out loud, of what those requirements are specifically. But I'm trying to think if there's anything in there that would be of particular concern. You know, the city will be responsible for just making sure that that you bill us on a regular basis, invoice us on a regular basis for eligible expenses under the program. There are, of course, cross-cutting federal requirements for federal funds, and the city is responsible for adhering with those federal requirements. But like I said, we have staff here at the WCDA whose express purpose is to assist you in complying with those requirements. Trying to think if there's anything else that you see in the written agreement that would kind of cause any concern for the city. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of federal requirements for these funds, and the city in this position will be a subrecipient to the WCDA. So some of those are federal requirements you will be responsible for. But like I said, it's our role to assist you in that, provide technical assistance to the city in that respect. I would have to get a copy of the written agreement in front of me to actually see what the specific requirements are. But if you give me a chance, I can definitely take a look at that agreement and get back with you with the specifics.
Are there a certain amount of awards? So you said there was $500,000 or $750,000 per project. Are there a certain amount of projects per area that can happen, like Casper? I mean, are we limited to 2? Can we have 10?
This round, no. This round, we did not put a specific limit on the number of number of projects that a city can apply for. When it comes to funding projects, we will make an attempt to disperse the funding as geographically wide as we can. We don't want to concentrate it in any one area geographically. But there is no specific limit on the number of applications that a city can make to WCDA. In future rounds, that'll probably change, just because I think we received 61 letters of intent. And so it's going to be a competitive round. We'll probably put a cap on the number of applications at some point in the future, but we haven't done that yet.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Kathy?
This would actually be more of a question for city manager. So I guess my question becomes is what is different at this point from the city's perspective than when we used to run it as far as manpower time and manpower requirements?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, you're going right along the lines of what we would be concerned about in terms of being a sub-recipient to these dollars. And so if I could use that opportunity that Councilman Kathy has afforded to ask a couple questions, Mr. Mayor, is that all right? Maybe I can get to some of the heart of what we're looking for. Mr. Beatty, if you don't mind. So as a sub-recipient, I assume that that means that we potentially then will be on the hook, if you will, for a single audit on our end, or would that be something that would be done through your office?
Yeah, so we are the allocating agency for the CDBG grant. So we are the ones that allocate the federal funds. Being a subrecipient no, there's no single audit requirement. Any single audit requirement that'll be incurred will be incurred by WCDA.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's very good news. Very good news. Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a follow-up. With respect then to, again, that status of being a subrecipient, if the city council decided that they would not be a sponsor for applications that come through the city council, what does that mean in terms of the status of the application thereafter?
So let me make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. So if the city decided at one point or some point in time that you did not want to further accept or further receive the CDBG funds from WCDA, or?
Well, I guess it's more of a two-part question,
Okay.
if I may, Mr. Mayor. The first part is, as the application is tendered
Right.
through the city council, they essentially are asking, if I understand this correctly, the city to become a sponsor of the application to forward to you. If the council decided we don't want to be a sponsor for this particular application because there's pieces and parts missing or whatever the case may be, what then becomes the status of that application?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah. So, so any application that's received from the city that has, say, for example, a nonprofit sponsor who's actually going to be, a nonprofit agency who's actually going to be carrying out the function for you. I don't want to get that confused. So if there's an applications that we receive at WCDA, we can only grant funds to units of local government. So we can only grant funds to cities and counties. That's where the funding, that's where the relationship with us will be. There will be a relationship with us and you. However you guys choose to actually deliver your service, if you want to use a sponsor or a third party, a nonprofit, if you want to do it yourselves, that's fine with us. But our only relationship will be with you as the unit of local government. So if your third party agency who's actually running the program for you, if at some point in time you as the city decide you want to step out of that relationship and you don't want to be involved with that third party agency that's running the program, that won't really be an option. It's going to be your agreement with that third party for services that expends your grant that you receive from us, if that makes sense.
Well, if I could restate what I think I may be hearing, if indeed the city decides we think there's too many pieces and parts missing in this application to where we're not comfortable being a sponsor,
Right.
that ends the conversation, it
That
sounds
is
like.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And so therefore WCDA says, well, we can only award to a government unit, therefore if the city doesn't want to play, that award is not going to happen.
That
Fair?
is 100% correct. Yes, you guys are our partner. Whoever you choose to partner with in the community to actually fulfill the service delivery is between you and that agency. Our relationship will only be with you.
Okay. One more question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and hopefully Councilman Cathy, we're getting to more meat and detail of what you might be looking for. So as we are engaged in the relationship with a nonprofit third party, and we are concerned that their compliance with respect to, use of the funds or whatever the case may be that the guidelines lay out for us and so on, that you help us through, and we appreciate that, by the way. We don't see that compliance, and we're concerned, and we don't want to be on the hook, as it were, as a subrecipient. What then becomes our ability to object or recourse?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, so I think that's a very foreseeable circumstance where we start off a situation or start off a project with a third party nonprofit service provider, and we start seeing things kind of slip, go off the rails. Cross-cutting regulations aren't necessarily being followed to the T. Yeah, so in that situation, that's a situation where I would recommend that you and I, as the city and the state recipient, get together ASAP, get my staff involved, right? Make sure that we have, for lack of a better term, a come to Jesus meeting with the third-party service provider, and make sure that they understand what requirements need to be fulfilled to satisfy the HUD funding, and kind of do an intervention in terms of a compliance sort of activity at that point. That's what we're here for. Again, I mean, we'll do that right away. We don't mind being the bad guys. We'll come in and you can call the service provider in and say, hey, there might be an issue. We'll come in and play bad cop and say, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z, or the city is at risk of losing this funding, quite frankly. And so we're more than willing to play that role.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, Mr. Beatty, the concern would, of course, be, putting the taxpayers of Casper on the hook, as it were, for repayment, because oftentimes, the federal government isn't real concerned about, who did what. They just want their money back, and we certainly want to vet our partners in such a way that becomes a very minimal possibility. I want to be sure that as a partner, that the city of Casper, in their effort to sort of facilitate these dollars, don't have the fiduciary responsibility of having to repay certain obligations that weren't followed appropriately and so forth by our third-party partner.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's always a concern. If there is a repayment requirement or whatnot, then that's always a concern that we would want to make sure that whatever activities were performed by either the city or your service provider didn't cause that repayment, trigger that repayment obligation. So that would always be a concern, certainly. My boss is a former risk manager from one of the local banks, so she's really done a great job in terms of schooling me and getting me into a mindset of reducing risk, reducing potential repayment liabilities, and I think we've come a long way in doing that. So I'd be surprised. I can't ever say that it'll never happen, but with the measures that we're going to have in place, with the written agreement that we have with you, that's going to spell out what the requirements are, and then whatever agreement you have with your service provider, I think there'll be enough coverage to ensure that we don't have any repayments. But of course, you never know. That I can't guarantee that. So, yeah.
Councilman Cathy.
Question for you, or whichever, and this may even get over to Ms. Becker as well. But what is the difference between now and where did we get our Where did we get the money before? Did we go straight to the feds, to HUD? So all we're really doing here is we're putting another agency between us and HUD, and everything else is still going to fall to us just the way it was before. So this is not really helping us out at all from the city's standpoint, because we have decided when we stopped doing it that we couldn't spend the manpower with all of the strings that came attached initially. And now all we've done is put one more layer that now we have to go through WCDA as opposed to going straight to HUD, but we're still going to have the manpower to administer the program. I thought when all this was coming about is that WCDA was going to be doing all of that administering, and basically we were going to have minimal exposure and minimal time spent. But this is right back when Ms. Clark was our CDBG person, that basically that turned into a full-time position monitoring all of the applications and everything coming to us. So I don't see where this is gaining us anything, and I think we really ought to be evaluating, do we really have the staff and the manpower and the funds to be able to manage it? Because this was canceled because of that, and we didn't apply for it directly. So that's where I was trying to get to, is what's different, and the only thing it sounds like is different is another layer of management between us and HUD.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cathy, you sharpened the point very well on that concern. You know, I without a doubt, the reason that we brought the recommendation to your predecessors some three and a half years ago to not continue the participation of a direct recipient in the CDBG dollars and so forth, the program management, et cetera, was just exactly what you described, Councilman Cathy. The reporting and so forth was arduous. It seemed to never end as it relates to, you know, closing out all the grants that we received, and the you know, the narrowness with respect to where we could use the grants and the dollars and so forth seemed to be getting tighter and tighter. I guess I would say that it appears to me, and I'm inviting rebuttal if necessary from our guest or from Ms. Becker. It would appear to me that WCDA is bringing to the table the manpower, if you will, as it relates to following up on the reporting and doing a lot of the heavy lifting that typically was required of us previously. And so my hunch is, so far, based on what I'm hearing tonight, that we would not need to be engaged in bringing on another Joy Clark to help us navigate all of that reporting and follow-up and auditing that we previously were responsible for by ourselves. And so I guess I'd like to turn to our guest, and I hope I didn't mispronounce your last name earlier.
Beatty, that's correct.
Bailey?
Beatty.
Beatty, I'm sorry, I couldn't quite see your name tag. To respond, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so valid concern, absolutely. I think there's a distinction that needs to be drawn, though. There are two sorts of grant administration activities surrounding CDBG, right? So there's grant level administration, which is, I think, what you're getting at, which is like the plans, the plan amendments, making sure that you know, you file the appropriate annual performance reports on the right time. All that's grant level administration stuff. There's project level administration stuff too. So we at WCDA will do all of the grant level administration. That's all us. We're taking on all those responsibilities. There will be some project level administration responsibilities that will be shared between the city and WCDA. You know, we at WCDA will expect that the city will be following the Civil Rights Act in terms of, you know, not discriminating against people on the basis of the protected categories. We'll expect you guys to follow or be at least aware of Davis-Bacon in terms of wage rates on your projects, right? These are sort of project level things that we'll expect you to be helping us with. Yeah, and these are things that, you know, that will be in your written agreement as expectations that the city will follow through with. But it will also be in the written agreement that WCDA will be providing you with technical assistance on these same requirements. That's part of our role as the state level administrator. So you'll get out of all the grant level administrative stuff that, quite frankly, I've been dealing with, and you're right, it isn't fun. It does seem to go on forever. And it's not fun. But we'll do all that at WCDA. There will be some project level administrative activities that we'll need to coordinate with Liz and our staff to make sure that those get done, essentially. If that makes sense.
Councilwoman Ingbridson.
So just to clarify, so we're essentially going to be receiving the money and then as a sub-agency and then award it to other places.
Correct.
And then they're going to submit the application. We're going to go through the application. We're going to decide who gets the money. When they do the reporting, are they reporting directly to you and then you submit it to HUD, or do they report to the city, then the city pushes it to you?
I was trying to think of what the sub-recipient, or what the agreement says. I believe that the city will be collecting the reporting and then forwarding it to us on what's going on. But again, that's something that Casey and Michael can help you do in terms of designing strategies to efficiently do that, to make it easy on your staff so that it's not a burden. But I believe the written agreement does have you guys collecting some of the data associated with the expenditures. It'll be easy because a lot of that data is going to be collected as you submit for reimbursement to us every month. It'll be amalgamated on a monthly basis, and then at the end of your contract period, just add up all the months, and it'll be pretty straightforward, I believe, in terms of reporting.
Councilman Now.
Mr. City Manager, this question's for you. There's going to be some administration. We're going to have to file for money every month. We're going to have to collect to whoever we gave the money to. And obviously, it's going to benefit our community, whomever we give that money to. So my question for you is, do we have the available manpower to facilitate the program?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Nell, I'm concerned about the exact same thing that you are. I am relieved to hear that the work plans and so forth will not be the responsibility of the city. I'm relieved to hear that the primary reporting and so forth, the closeouts and all that will be carried on by WCDA and not necessarily the city. And I'm also relieved to hear that the audits will not be the responsibility of the city. And so from that standpoint, I feel a lot better that with regard to the support that we'll need to provide, that we will not need to come to you for extra staffing. I would suggest, however, that once we get through our first year of participating from this perspective, being a subrecipient, our views may change, and we may be nervous again. But for now, and based on what I'm hearing tonight, I feel a lot better than what experience has taught us from prior years.
Councilmember Pollock.
And Mr. City Manager, would it be correct then that if our views do change, we can simply stop applying for grants?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, that's what I'm trying to say. If after our first year we are just not liking it, we probably would come forward with that recommendation if it's just becoming too burdensome.
Mr. Manager, to add on to that, the same question I asked before. Obviously, we could have as many as we want. Do we as a city do you have a number that you would be comfortable with not exceeding as far as projects that we would get behind?
Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. I'm reluctant to give you a number tonight, but certainly if you had 10 applications come forward, I'd be very, very nervous about trying to take on all of those. And with regard to the criteria that I'm going to hand out before we completely leave this topic, I suspect that not all of the applications will meet the criteria that we think makes the relationship much more infallible. So I will be giving these to you to consider as you consider all the applications next week. And I think that will help be sort of a winnowing mechanism with regard to whom we should partner up with in this first year as a sub-recipient status.
Okay, Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Mine's not a question, but a statement. And so the program I run up at the college is a sub-recipient of the U.S. Department of Education. And so it's very similar to what we do and how we are administered from our grant management from the University of Wyoming. And so there is going to be a level of work that comes from it, from the work that we do, being the subrecipient at Casper College and having to do that. But that being said, the support that we get from the University of Wyoming's staff that oversees my program of statewide is we receive that. So if we have data issues, if we have any issues as far as trying to figure out filing things or reporting or any of those types of stuff, we just simply refer back to the University of Wyoming and have them help us. The other part of it is dealing with the federal, I've been doing this for 8 years up at Casper College, and dealing with any federal grant is a pain in the rear. There's a lot of reporting. I'll be praying for you as you wade through all the grant stuff from the feds, and all the reporting. But but that also being said, I would say that the benefits for our community, I think we can give this a shot. Try and say, hey, this might be good for us to help those that are at risk and those that are in need in our communities to help develop. So I'm willing to give it a shot and see how it goes. If Liz is pulling her hair out saying this is not a great thing, then we'll come back and address that. So I'm willing to give it a shot. So thank you.
Councilman Cathy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had heard you say that there were 61 applications already.
61 letters of intent, so that doesn't necessarily translate into applications, but I would expect maybe a quarter to a third of those to translate into applications.
Now, who is going to screen those for applicability, and then could potentially city staff have to go through all 61 of those, or will that be something that your staff would go through? And then once you have narrowed it down, say to 25, okay, then do we have to go through all 25 of those?
No, sir. So you'll never see any of those applications. Those will all be submitted to WCDA from communities around the state. And then we'll go through all those applications, make sure that they meet the minimum requirements of the CDBG program, and then try and rank and evaluate them based upon, how much the need, leveraging of resources. I'm trying to think of all the criteria that we set up. We have a bunch of criteria that are laid out in the method of distribution. So we'll go through all those criteria and then rank them in top 1 to whatever, 1 to the lowest, and then take those to the board and say we have so much funding so we can fund the top 12, and staff recommends funding those projects. And if the board agrees, then those 12 projects are in business.
Okay.
Mr. Beatty, those are 61 applications statewide, correct?
Correct.
Not in this community.
That's correct, yes.
All right. Anybody else have anything else? Councilman
As a
Cathy.
follow-up then, so we're actually being put on the hook for statewide applications, not just City of Casper.
We're one of the applicants.
Right.
No, we are a sub-applicant.
No, we're an applicant.
Correct. So you would be an
We're
applicant.
one of the 61 that the city is.
Correct.
Or 2 or 3 of them, but we're not all 61.
Right.
Ms. Becker.
Just to let you all know what we would be doing next. Our public hearing is next week, that you would hear from what we have right now are 4 potential applications. Then depending on what your decisions are next week at the public hearing, those applications then would be passed on to me to upload into the WCDA system, just the 4, or what you all select next week. And so those would get shot off through the upload, through this portal, WCDA, and they are due by the 30th of September. Then WCDA would then take those along with whomever of the 61 did the same, met that application deadline, and then they would review that. We would wait. We would be doing a little bit behind the scenes and getting updates from Casey as to other components of information that we as the sponsor need to provide as documentation to WCDA. We have components, as Mr. Beatty said, the Davis-Bacon that we would have to be up on, but we have to have a public participation plan, which we do. That was approved when Joy Clark was over this program, so we have that. We have to do a lot of needs and justification studies, and we have to be able to provide that too, that as a municipality, as a sponsor, we have these documents in a line. So there would be some work there to follow up on. But again, next week with the public hearing will be a chance for you all, again, to truly vet and make sure that we want to, in fact, upload these applications. But then that would be on us to do. And I will be getting in and learning a little bit about their upload system tomorrow so that we can meet deadlines. That's what faces us immediately.
Councilman Nell.
Thank you. So, last week, a couple of us council members went on a tour for 2 of the 4. Are we going to get to know who these other 2 are or find out information before we're asked to make a decision next week?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Nell, we have requested the opportunity to tour those project areas as well, and those were not available to tour. Furthermore, we've been requesting project information to forward to you like we have done for the other 2 projects that you're referencing, and that information has not been available either. So at the very least, you will have a presentation next week from your applicants, and you'll get to make your decision based on, you know, the cumulative amount of information that you've received to that point. And it may be all of them, it may be some of them, it may be none of them. But that's up to you in terms of, you know, which projects you want to see move forward to Mr. Beatty's team.
Those applicants have confirmed that they will be available to present, again, starting at 5 next Tuesday night. And they're in 10-minute windows is what we had set up. So you will hear from all of them.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, do you have anything else you want to add on this?
Mr. Mayor, I think we've covered everything. You do have in front of you criteria that we would recommend you review and consider as sort of a filter with respect to determining whether or not you'd like to be a sponsor of the applications that you will see in person next week. Many of you will also have the opportunity to tour some of the project sites before you meet Tuesday night, and I would certainly recommend that. And hopefully by that point, you'll have all the information that we've been able to garner for you. And obviously, as I mentioned, some projects you'll be ready to support, some projects maybe not. And so we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Okay. I'll go over the agenda. Okay, we have agenda and legislative review. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I don't really have anything to add to those particular sections this evening.
Okay. All right, well, we'll take a couple-minute break then before we start our interviews.
On the agenda review,
Okay, at this time, we will interview candidates for the Ward 1 vacancy. The City Council is interviewing all eligible applicants. Each applicant will be given 10 minutes to answer the 5 questions the council developed. The position left vacant by former council member Lutz will terminate on January 3rd, 2023. The council member appointed will serve the remainder of that term and will be eligible for re-election in the 2022 election. The candidates will be answering the following questions, and these were provided to each candidate on Friday of last week. Explain why you want to serve on the City Council. Describe your qualifications and how they will benefit the City of Casper. How have you been following Council's activity lately? Please explain the current issues that the City Council is facing at this time. Are you willing to run for re-election in 2022? And tell us about your availability to serve the time commitments of council meetings and board meetings throughout the week and the month. Regular council meetings are held every first and third Tuesday of the month beginning at 5:30 p.m. And council work sessions are held every second and fourth Tuesday of the month beginning at 4:30 p.m. Council members are also assigned up to 4 boards or committees that meet monthly. Additionally, strategic planning sessions and special executive meetings are scheduled as needed. If selected, please note that you will be sworn in on Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers and will immediately join council for the regularly scheduled council meeting. For the applicants, on the lectern is a timer, and actually it's going to be a timer up on the screen that'll show 10 minutes. It will track the 10 minutes limited for each interview. In each of these, during each of these interviews, we are not going to be answering or asking the questions. You've already been provided the questions, so it'll be done in a narrative form. So we will start off and begin with Mr. Dennis Rollins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I filed for this position because I have both the skills and the knowledge to be a valuable member of the Casper City Council. When I moved to Casper in 1988, it was to accept the position of a manager at a propane gas company. Gas was 85 cents a gallon, and the best prime rib in town was at Dick Cedars Colonial Restaurant. I doubt we'll see gas at 85 cents a gallon anytime soon, and unfortunately, Mr. Cedar is no longer with us. My point is that I have seen many changes in the city in 33 years. I have previously contemplated running for city council, but never had the time to fully commit to the job until now. I believe the city council is the elected position that most directly affects me, as well as my neighbors. I have lived in several parts of the city over the years, including North Casper for 4 years, so I have a good understanding of the Casper's character. I owned my own heating and air conditioning company here for 17 years. In this capacity, I worked with residents from all walks of life, got to know them and their accomplishments, as well as their struggles. I also needed to work with the building department to make sure that my employees were performing their jobs properly, so I understand the mechanics of the city's governance. For 6 years, I produced the Wyoming Portraits television series for PBS. As I explored some of Wyoming's most interesting stories, I also familiarized myself with many local ventures, including Food for Thought, Joshua's Storehouse, and the Casper Greenhouse Project. During my tenure operating the public access channel, I worked closely with the city manager's office as well as council to create programming highlighting various city services, so I understand how they work. During my time as president of the Stage 3 Theater Board of Directors, Pat Greiner and I spearheaded the drive to purchase and renovate the building the theater now occupies on Center Street. In terms of board experience, I have served on the Mount Hope Lutheran Schools Board of Education for the last 6 years. For 2 years, I also served as vice president of my church congregation. Over the years, I have been involved in numerous recreational endeavors, including softball, hockey, and auto racing, so have a feel for Casper's recreational needs. All of these activities have introduced me to a wide variety of people and views that give me a unique perspective of Casper. My work with the city has piqued my interest in the issues that the council has been facing. I do follow local news outlets for the coverage of the city issues. I have been receiving emails from the city with council agendas for about 7 years now, and I always take time to read them. I closely followed Mr. Hyman's bid to operate the public access channel, as I was interested in seeing someone revive that media option. I also closely follow any liquor license discussions, as I know that is a hot commodity. If I am chosen for this position, I am absolutely willing to run for re-election in 2022. I am committed to Casper and have no plans to leave. I raised my family here, and although I was not born in Wyoming, consider Casper to be my home. I have roots here. My daughter is a graduate of Natrona County High School as well as Casper College. She and her family currently reside in Denver. I would like to talk a little bit about what I have seen in Casper and where I would like to see it go in the future. I remember talking to John Huff when he first bought what would eventually become the Yellowstone Garage, and his dreams for revitalizing the downtown area. I talked to Kevin Hawley when David Street Station was just an idea. Their dreams have now come to fruition, and it continues today with the building of the Nolan. There is still room for growth in the downtown area. I would love to see another locally owned, high-end restaurant located there, as I think that is something Casper is missing and is a niche that could be filled nicely. Marvin Peale was going to put one on top of the Gladstone Tower, but unfortunately renovation costs were too high. Hopefully someone can make that a reality and pick up where Marvin left off. We still have some vacant buildings downtown that are ripe for the right opportunity to develop them. We need continued growth, but within reason. As a city council, we need to keep things that are unique to Casper and find ways to expand the economy while maintaining the Casper feel. I feel I would like to see more diversity in our economy so that we are not as susceptible to the boom and bust cycles we have seen for decades. We have become a destination for sports competitions, and our medical facilities are the finest in the state. Facilities like the Ford Wyoming Event Center and the Lyric are key to bringing more kinds of events to Casper, but we still lack a true convention center. As people continue to move here from big cities and from other states, we need to be certain that they find the resources that they need and want and can fit into our community. And we need to meet the needs of Casper's current residents as well. For all the improvements that have been made during the last few years, we are not a perfect city. There are still issues that need to be addressed. We still have problems with drugs, vandalism, and other criminal activity. North Casper is a food desert. We have infrastructure issues and need to find a way to pay to fix them. We must all work together to tackle our existing problems and be attuned to new ones that may come our way. We need to create an atmosphere where everyone feels accepted and that every voice is important and can be heard. As I said earlier, I previously did not think I had the time to properly devote to this position. However, I recently completed a feature film and do not currently have any other projects waiting in the wings. My part-time job typically requires less than 20 hours per week, so I would have time to devote to my attention to city council duties, work sessions, and meetings. When I am on my job, it is spent on the streets of Casper, where I can observe potential issues within our community and see all areas of Casper, not just my own neighborhood. In short, I have loved living here. I have gained a great deal from being here and have made it my home. Serving on the city council is a way to give back to the community that has given me so much. I ask only for the chance to serve. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jacqueline Anderson.
evening, Council, Your Honor, City Manager. My name is Jackie Anderson. In 2020, I was elected to the Casper City Council with over 33% of the votes represented for Ward 1. Along voted in were 4 other women, plus a standing woman mayor. Myself, Lynn Whalen, Barb Perriam, Barbara Waters, and Mildred Millie Lamb, with Kathleen Dixon as mayor leading the way. The year 2000 marked the first and only time ever in our community of Casper's history to have a majority of women on our city council. I represent 3 generations of Casper natives. My dad, Ralph Andy Anderson, served for the Casper Fire Department for almost 30 years. My mother, Angie Anderson, was a registered nurse for Wyoming Medical Center for almost 45 years. I am a Casper small business owner and have been in this city for almost 30 years. I am the owner of the new revitalized Cheese Barrel Restaurant. Circa 1928, that building has been there. Located in the heart of Casper, 544 South Center. I have a saying, if you can own a business in Casper, you can open up anywhere. The obstacles of doing small business in Casper are numerous. The economy, the population, the politics, the construction, transportation issues, and the weather. The challenges sometimes are overwhelming. But because of these challenges, the community Casper has shown us an outstanding entrepreneurial spirit. I am very glad that it is represented here on this council. True success is perseverance. And there are a lot of success stories up here represented tonight. 20 years ago, we as a council implemented various projects from the start. East Side Development to Hat 6 Road were just blueprints of ideas back then. Now it is a thriving commercial and residential community that is only growing and expanding further. The Aquatic Center addition to our community rec center, whereas Helen Wolf reminded me as a previous board member to the Leisure Service Board that she recommended the Lazy River addition to the center, which we did have to fight for, along with the other water features. The transit bus system, which now runs all through Casper and provides a much-needed service to our community. 3 Crowns remediation development on the Amical refinery site, which the process of contaminated soils works into a viable working environment, such as a golf course. One of my favorites, the agricultural research facility located up at Casper College, where before students had to drive 45 minutes out of town in all kinds of weather conditions to a ranch to study animal research, i.e. artificial insemination and other agricultural and farm products. I rallied and rounded up the students and faculty to show up to council chambers for the final vote, which, by the way, was not running in our favor from the last 2 votes for the facility. The students did show up in droves, including former City Attorney Jack Stewart. We were here until almost midnight that night. The council chambers absolutely packed with students. Every student was heard, and they got their ag facility research building. That was a big win for our Casper College students. Before I was elected to council, I owned a little cafe where I would host Downtown Merchant Association barbecues, and we would gather together to discuss downtown issues. Then I became president of the Merchants Association the same year that I was elected to council. Through the persistent efforts of myself and my fellow merchants, we established a strong union between 3 relevant entities, the City of Casper, the DDA, and the Merchants Association of Downtown Casper. We started developing and rebuilding and rebranding our beloved downtown Casper. Placement of new historically relevant black lights, new sidewalks, walkways, rails to trails, landscaping, streets, etc., the Wyoming Bank Building. In 2003, our council, with the direction of the DDA and the Historical Preservation Committee, implemented the groundwork for designation of a downtown historical Casper, a national historical recognized downtown. In 2016, I think 13 years later, I believe, we finally received our National Historic designation for downtown Casper, 13 years. The Ten Commandments issue, that was a big one, where we had two groups, the ACLU, who demanded that we remove the Ten Commandments tablets located on city property across from St. Anthony's, and Reverend Phelps and his group. Members wanting to place an immoral and indecent monument of slain student Matthew Shepard, his entrance into eternal damnation for his sin of homosexuality. I saw that. I saw that headstone. That was a big battle. But in the end, we as a council came up with a compromise and created the Monument Park located next to the Nick. Now more noticeable than ever are our Ten Commandments on top of our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. 20 years ago, 9/11 happened. 9 months into our council term. Believe me when I say I understand and empathize with you and the pressures that you are having to face during this time. I believe I've answered the first two questions that was given to me from council. I have been following current issues facing council, including more development in the Yellowstone district, the new scooters, and the pros and cons of the scooters. I love the scooters, by the way. And I would like to discuss the plan for one-way to two-way traffic plan on Wolcott Street. 20 years ago, we supported this plan. We've had at least 3 studies on this plan of an outdated one-way plan, so we've already had it. In 2014, we were approached by the city and the DDA to discuss changing the one-ways back to two-ways. We were invited to a meeting hosted by the DDA and the city engineers where we were shown wonderful blueprints for that change. We were told that $400,000 was allocated for that plan. I personally called the DDA week after week, asking where that money is coming from and when that plan was going to be implemented. The plan was dropped. So I would like to say now, yes, please, go ahead with changing those one-ways back to two-ways. We have asked for that for over 20 years. The plan is located in a file, so I know that we don't have to do that again. The price tag of $400,000, unfortunately, I'm sure the price has gone up. But it needs to be done. A lot of time, money, and planning have gone to David Street Station and the Yellowstone District, and we need to redirect some much needed attention to our downtown. We were here first. I have a great relationship with our city manager, Mr. Napier. Mr. Napier was our assistant city manager when I was on council. Ever since Carter's return to Casper to serve as our city manager, we have been in constant contact about downtown issues and visionary ideas that I come up with, which are a lot. I have to bring up this memory. We as a council were invited to Kansas City, Missouri to participate and represent in the League of Cities convention. I still have my cowboy hat from that. Oh my God, 1 minute. We were supposed to bring items to gift bags. Everything was running smoothly until we realized that we were getting razzed and criticized because we brought chocolate guns from Donnell's. Going back to downtown, I would like to pursue the one-ways back to two-ways. I would like the DDAs to consider expanding their boundaries to encompass other businesses surrounding boundary lines. I would like to pursue and adopt an alley program between the city merchants and property owners, much like they do in Fort Collins. In terms of the vision of downtown Casper, I've always been there. I am a Casper girl. I have my footprints imprinted on a sidewalk in North Casper. My roots are here. My home is here. I raised my son here. These 3 roses represent my councilwomen that have passed on. Kathleen Dixon, we called her the Bulldog. She was my mentor. She was grace and strength in motion. Barb Waters invited me to my first Jewish Seder. And Mildred Millie Lamb, how I love Millie. So many battles we fought, and she was the one that taught me patience, perseverance, and grace. So I stand here in front of you in representation of some of the fruition of some of the plans that we started 20 years ago. And I thank you, council, for this time.
Thank you. Can we get the screen on? Right here. Can we possibly turn the screen on because I hate to keep looking at it to see if that works. Well, I just don't want to be rude and look back. I'd rather look right here. One moment.
Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. Mayor and Council. We all need a reboot once in a while. My name is Kimberly Holloway. I also served on council, like Ms. Anderson did, from 2009 to 2013. And that is why I would love to fill the rest of Ms. Luntz's term, because public service was probably one of the best things that I did in my life so far, even having been to law school over the past 4 years and now being a practicing attorney in Casper. I learned a lot. I learned about things that I thought I already knew about when I was on council. I was excited to keep learning and participating in discussions and moving the city forward. So public service, I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I would be very happy to fulfill the rest of Ms. Luntz's term. I'm going to jump around in the questions because I want to answer the running for re-election. I think it's too soon for me to determine that. Wasn't something I was planning on. When I saw the opening, I thought that's a way for me to serve my community again. I've lived here for 18 years. My youngest was born here. All the kids that are in college are at University of Wyoming. My oldest son graduated from there. I graduated from there in 2014 and went to the College of Law, graduated in 2019. But re-election, I'm not sure. It's a great thing about city councils. It brings out all kinds of people that want to run, and I'm always excited to see new faces. I don't necessarily think it should be the same people. Just because you're an incumbent doesn't mean you should win re-election. Of course, institutional knowledge is very helpful, and that is one of the qualifications I think I bring. I don't have a steep learning curve here. I remember fondly the time commitments. I was a stay-at-home mom back then, so I had a lot of time and I could do the committees and the commissions. And now I'm my own boss and I work out of my home. And I can control my caseload and I can make time for those meetings. So I'm willing to do that. How do I follow your activities? The Casper Star Tribune, of course, Twitter, the usual social media, etc. The issues I see facing the council, I'm going to be specific to council, kind of like Jackie was prior to me. I think you have a representation issue on council itself. Some of you gentlemen, I'd like to see you encourage your wives, your daughters, your sisters, your mothers to run for political office. We have a terrible dearth of gender representation at all levels of government. So you have an opportunity to balance things here. Not that, I'm sure all of these candidates are fabulous, but I do think that's something that you need to keep in mind, replacing Ms. Luntz perhaps with somebody of the same gender. We need that representation at all levels, and it can start at the most basic level of city council. The bigger issues you face, I mean, is anything else new? It's money. It's always the issue for council. I think your challenge, though, is not necessarily in this room or in that room. It's with the legislature. As long as you have a legislature that is going to cling to the past, and we always talk about diversifying the economy, and yet nothing changes. I've been here 18 years. I've heard that conversation, those buzzwords over and over, and very little changes. So I think one of the biggest challenges for council is to lobby our legislators to start embracing creative ways to improve our economy. And we have to. We're going to get left in the dust. The market forces are telling us, we don't want your coal. The market forces are telling us, we don't want your oil. It's time to think creatively and embrace technologies that are new and that are wanted and profitable. And that's what the city needs. So that's the biggest overarching issue that I see facing. I'm thrilled with the improvements I've seen in the community. I'm a little worried that we're not balancing downtown's needs with the rest of the neighborhoods. I still walk my neighborhood every day, so I see the storm drains clogged with dirt and gravel. We had those fabulous heavy rains in early summer, but in my neighborhood, we have a lot of gravel washout and dirt, and it piles up in the storm drains, and I see silver birches growing out of the storm drains and river willows and stuff. But so there are issues like that that are close to my heart because I'm so close to my neighborhood, and I see it in other neighborhoods. So I would like to see those issues addressed more often. I know it's a matter of money, and we can't sweep the streets. Sweep the streets. I asked for that, actually. I contacted the city about sweeping my street, and I was told, well, we do when the street sweepers aren't down. Apparently all the street sweepers were down, but somehow the next morning at 9 o'clock, a street sweeper appeared on my street because at least I guess she was willing to address my immediate concern. And I love that the city employees are always helpful, kind. They're excellent public servants. I appreciate them. We should always appreciate them. They have a hard job. And as budgets become an issue, if you're hurting for money, you're going to hurt for attracting good city employees, people willing to serve when maybe they're not going to make as much as they could in another community, in another state that has more forward thinking about how to support our cities, towns, and counties. So I'm very honored for the opportunity. I'm going to be brief and be seated. That's what we're taught at law school. Make your points and be seated. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your time.
Okay, Zarin Hinchin.
That was very well done. Yeah. Alrighty, so as we said, my name is Zarin Hinchin. I reside at 912 North Grand Street, and I put my name forward not lightly by any means, as civil service, public office is somewhat of my career path, as is reflected in my degrees that I've gone to university for. Secondly, the most influential aspect, perhaps, that motivated me to put my name in was I would like to see more representation for the one neighborhood that is incorporated in Ward 1 entirely, which is North Casper, which I feel is historically stigmatized in many ways, and generally, I would say, underrepresented at all branches and levels of government. You see a great opportunity for growth and expansion. As you've seen already in North Casper, we have community theater projects, youth theater, Boys and Girls Club, the ball fields, and soon to have a bit larger facility for the Food for Thought program, which is near and dear to my heart. It's 2 blocks away from my house, and they're soon hopefully going to be moving into the former North Casper Elementary, which is directly across the street from my house. We also have nonprofits such as Seton House, which does fantastic work for a specific minority in our community, and I would love to see more development in the neighborhood in regards to that. Also, North Casper is incredibly close to the downtown development, and I would particularly like to be involved with the Interstate Interface project that's going to be moving forward. As I am younger, a lot of these actions that are going to be taken now is something that I will have the opportunity to see later on in my life here in this community. Second or third, I suppose, I would like to bring representation to the younger voters of this community. If you look altogether, the age group 20 to 30 represents roughly 14% of Casper's population. If you take out all the people under 18, that demographic represents 29% of the adults in our community. And obviously we have a lot of folks on council currently that represent the 30 to 40-year-old age range, which is also close to on par with the 20 to 30-year-old age range. So I would just like to see a younger voice at the table. As far as my qualifications, like I said, I am young, but my experience in construction and specifically quality control has familiarized me with codes, building codes and zoning as well, which is obviously, I would say, helpful to a lot of the current conversations had on council. And this is also going to be very important with the upcoming and ongoing infrastructure that we have going on, both in our downtown and across the city. Finally, my experience in the service industry, which has been particularly hard hit in the last year, which is also mainly occupied by people of the younger generation, would be helpful as we're moving forward. You know, it's just data-driven. Hospitalizations in regards to COVID are going up. That means likely there's going to be more children in quarantine, which likely also means more mothers out of the workforce. And just having a say in that conversation moving forward, I think would be very advantageous for the city council and the community at large. My experience in the service industry has also familiarized me, and I believe I have a good working relationship with the Natrona County Casper Health Department, which I think will also be a huge advantage moving forward, just with community education and development. This, in addition to a lot of my volunteer work that I've done, mainly with waterways, I would have been really excited to have a conversation on City Council regarding the recent developments with the Audubon fencing off area over at Morad. As you can see on my resume, I have done former riparian repair work. So anything naturalist that helps conserve what a beautiful city we have for the future generation is something very near and dear to me. And then ultimately, on my qualifications, I spent 6 years of my life achieving a 4-year degree in political science. This obviously does not necessarily mean that I know the ins and outs of governments, but I would say that it definitely provides a great groundwork for a lot of the issues and how to attack them moving forward. As far as upcoming council issues, you know, there's fund allocations from the 1 cent funds that might be introduced into the interstate infrastructure for Center Street. We also have the 6 cents campaign, education campaign coming up, and moving forward with that. And, you know, I grew up here. I remember seeing the 1 cent on the rec center at many other facilities that I utilized growing up, and I would love to see those funds allocated that help produce a greater sense of community and opportunities to keep our kids healthy and outside and active and just to serve our community overall. You know, I also am aware that there are somewhat of issues with youth vandalism and, you know, idle youth, which is a problem that I think our city's had for quite a while, you know. When I was young, I know that there wasn't a whole lot to do either. So I would love to see some use moving forward that helps alleviate or mitigate some of this idle nature that kids are presented with these days. You know, I'm also familiar with downtown ordinances, the two-way street developments, as we talked about, speed limits, and then also there's legislative issues coming up, particularly the non-discrimination, as well as the missing person legislation at the state level. And I would just think it'd be fantastic to have an opportunity to speak in on that. Question number 4 regarding if I would run for re-election is somewhat nuanced. Simple answer is yes. The only reason it's nuanced is because I have been anticipating applying for a dual degree program down in Laramie for a JD MA program, and I was anticipating attending that in the fall of 2023. Unfortunately, but perhaps fortunately, she's probably watching, I recently got engaged, so now the decision is no longer just up to me. So if appointed, that would be a conversation that I would have to have, and would be more than happy to provide an answer at a later date. And then finally, in regards to my availability, I pushed myself extremely hard from 18 to about 23, and I unfortunately burned myself out. And so now I've really found a job where I enjoy incredible quality of life, and it also allows me to have a flexible schedule. And as this is more or less a job interview to myself, I would approach this position as though it were a job, and I would make it a point to be present for any committee and council meetings. That being said, I would like to thank all of you, thank my fellow candidates for coming out and just putting yourselves out there for representing Ward 1, and with that, I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Okay, Wes Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take those 2 extra minutes because I'm a preacher and I might need them. I'm just kidding. I would like to go backwards through the questions because they're very short answers for me. Am I available to serve? Yes, I'm available to serve all the timeframes that are listed there and would be willing and able to do that. My schedule is flexible. I get to figure that out on my own. And so I'd be willing to do that and serve in those capacities. And I would, at this point, be willing to run for re-election. So the third question was, how am I keeping informed about what's going on at the council? And I would just freely have to admit, I have only recently been paying more attention to some of the specifics going on in the city. Attended one of the meetings recently. We talked about the vandalism downtown. I have met with colleagues in regards to that, actually, coming up with solutions for one of the things in the downtown area. I actually have a specific idea. If you've heard of the mosquito, I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a high-pierced sound that only people under 30 can hear, and it would disperse them if we didn't want them in a particular place at a particular time. And then you can just shut it off at other times. Also, the fencing, I was here to talk about the fencing, and I thought that was a unique discussion about the park and Morad Park, and felt like it was pretty minimal, and so the decisions that were made seemed pretty pragmatic and practical. And then just some various zone changing and liquor licenses, et cetera, that were handled. Particularly, I noticed Old Willard School being rezoned. So that was some of the things that I've become aware of recently through the agenda, through attending meetings, et cetera. So why would I want to serve on the city council? It's kind of a wild adventure in some ways. I think what I stand for, what I've been about as a young man growing up, and then just becoming a pastor. Also, I'm a graphic designer too, a professional artist, and have used some of my skills as a designer in the community, actually, for Fort Casper School, working with Liz in the old Yellowstone district on some projects. So I've done that, but my leadership that I bring, we've been in the community now 22 years, and we consider Casper our home, and I want to remain here, and so I want to be able to have a voice in what goes on in the city. And so I'm willing to meet with people at any kind of level to be able to help us come up with common sense solutions for whatever particular issues that are in front of us. As a creative person, I tend to think outside the box. I want us to come up with innovative solutions to various problems. And so no specific ones that come to mind that we could work on, but I'm ready to go with any problem, anytime, come up with a great creative solution. I want to help the city prosper by helping it communicate at the highest levels of efficiency through sharing ideas respectfully, honoring every person in our city. I appreciated, Bruce, especially your comments the other day when the one gal was talking. I thought that was handled really well, and how you were attentive to what she was saying. I just noticed that. I thought that's the kind of people that we need to be, kind of character that we need to have. And I want to make use of my years of leadership in this community to build bridges between various people groups, to create common ground for the exchange of ideas, to aid in a big thing that I believe in is stewardship. And when I became the pastor recently of a 30,000 square foot building that only had 15 people meeting in it on a regular basis, I said, we got to change that. And began to start developing opportunities for other community groups to start using that facility. So I've been doing that. We started a coffee shop there that just opened up recently. I'm the director of that, and we remodeled that so that we could make a more positive impact in that immediate vicinity, and for the whole city, doing some creative things to be able to do that. I want to make a real difference as a real person. Sometimes I think we just get categorized, like I'm a white guy, I'm older, I'm a certain, there's all these, can we represent people that are different than us? I think we can. If we're think outside of ourselves, if we think of other people's interests other than just our own. And so I consider myself a person that can do that pretty well. As a leader in the community, I've served in leadership and in schools. I have 4 sons, all grown now. I got one left at Kelly Walsh High School. He's a senior there. I've served on the PTO council, served on a design committee for Fort Casper, like I mentioned earlier. As a leader in the faith community, I've served as president of both the Central Wyoming Evangelical Fellowship and the Servants United, to work with various nonprofits in the community to bring rapport, to listen to each other and to make a difference in the city. So as a strategic thinker, that's one of my things that I love to do, is to creative problem solve and work with people in our community who need support and who need respect. And I believe that we can do that for people, and I want to be a leader in that all the time. Honor and respect people. I've worked with budgets for nonprofit organizations. I've worked with difficult people and charming people, and tried to always come up with what I call a triple win. It's a win for me, it's a win for you, and it's a win for our community. And that's really important for me. I believe my strong sense of morals and values will be especially beneficial for this city so that we can make decisions for the common good of all the diverse people of Casper, using honesty, integrity, and humility to make sure that happens. And as a professional artist too, just to throw that one in there, to bring a sense of creativity, design, innovation, finding solutions for the problems that we could face together as a city. I'm definitely would be a newbie at this particular thing, but have served in various forms of leadership. And I think those skills and abilities would be transferable in serving our city that I love so much, and I plan on being here for the rest of my life. So thank you for your consideration, Council.
Thank you. All right, Mr. David Holsheiser.
Distinguished council, thank you for allowing me to speak today. Mr. Connell took my thunder a little bit because I too was going to start backwards a little bit and kind of just go through those quick things. Are you willing to run for re-election in 2022? I actually am. Hopefully the constituents would see that I've done a good job if allowed to serve on council with you folks as well. Availability wise, yes, I do have a full-time job, but that full-time job does allow me flexibility and the ability to meet the parameters and the meeting requirements for city council. So to really get started, I want to speak to you from the heart about who I am and why it's important to me that this body functions well. I believe in the importance of local government. Local government to me is the most important aspect of our country and our nation. Why? Because local government is where we, the people, have the most impact in our daily lives, which means that you folks have impact in all of our lives here in Casper. And that is why it's so important. A lot of folks have been up on this podium and used the word I a lot. This isn't about me. To me, this is about the people that we serve. I truly, truly believe that in the bottom of my heart. The importance that this body, this voting body has on people's lives is tremendous, because this is how our government was founded, was that the federal government is here, but the daily lives is locally with you, because that's where they have the most opportunity to make changes, is at that local level. And you guys do touch the lives of the local people every day. And I want to be, I have been a part of that, and I want to be a part of that continuing forward, because I do believe that that is important. The reason why I feel that I want to serve on this board is because this is my home. I am a Wyoming native, born and raised, and Casper is my home. It has been for the last 20 plus years. I have served in this community as a local law enforcement officer for the majority of my adult life. After retiring, I still have served within the public safety and now the nonprofit side of things within Casper. And to me, it's important to serve this community and keep serving the community. So this is my home. I have 4 children, one in high school, one in middle school, and my 2 twins are in elementary school. And I see how important even the decisions that are made can affect them, and how important it is that we listen to their constituents from where we are at. So it is important. One of the tenets of who I am and who I have been in a long time in my life is a servant leader. I believe very much in setting aside the pursuit of me to making sure that the people that I work with and the people that I lead are the most important aspect of what I do. I believe that people are the foundation of a great community, the foundation of a great organization, the foundation of a great employment opportunity. Without great employees, the city of Casper would struggle. I assume that would be correct, Mr. Napier. And why do we have to have servant leadership? Because they are important. They are the ones out doing the jobs. And that all starts with everyone on this council supporting that and understanding that our employees and our constituents are the most important thing. I truly believe that. That is who I am through and through. If you talk to people about who I am and what I stand for, that is absolutely who I am. Talking about some of the issues that are facing Casper, I have been involved in many different things at the county level, understanding what's going on at the county level, but also the city level as my prior career in law enforcement. But local recent things that are affecting everyone here, I do believe, budget issues coming out of the pandemic with COVID-19. There's always going to be issues with that. Budget shortfalls, things that need to be considered, and maybe as we move forward, what is that going to look like in terms of potential interactions with the Delta variant, and where do we go from there? But as we look at other things that have been impacting our local area, you look at the local liquor license changes that are happening, the missing person legislation, which in my prior career is very important to me, and I would love to see things go through like that. The bias crime legislation, the 6% sales tax education that is going on, but also, I know Ms. Holloway touched base on it a little bit, but the interaction between the Wyoming legislature and our local city councils and our county commissions is going to be something that you're going to have to work on moving forward, because the state legislator is going to ask you to do far more with less. They continually will. And how do we do that given where we're at with the budget constraints now? So I believe that that is important. I really do. And I thank you for all the work that each one of you have done on all of these issues, and the forethought that you've put into allowing the public to give you an opportunity to listen and to their side and the information that they've provided. A little bit about my background, which would make me a potential candidate for you to consider, is I have dedicated my life to public service, over almost 25 years of it, not only in law enforcement, but in the public safety and nonprofit entity. I understand how to navigate with that local government, specifically at that county level, and how politics and a lot of things and decisions are made. And I believe that transparency and being yourself and making sure that you address folks not on your behalf, but on their behalf as a representative is important. That's where the best decisions in government lie, I truly believe. Being part of this community, I've seen the best in people and I've seen the worst in people sometimes. And I've seen how local decisions impact people's lives, mostly for the positive, but I've also seen where it's impacted people's lives for the negative. And I've seen that in the law enforcement realm. And I know that the decisions that you make are important. And that's why, as a member of City Council, I would take the time to look at the decisions from multiple different areas, from different avenues, and from different perspectives, because that's important. Because the decisions you make have long-lasting effects. With that, I do possess a bachelor's degree, but also a master's degree in public administration. That was near and dear to my heart. I received that while I was with the Natrona County Sheriff's Office. And through that process, I learned a lot about public service, public administration, and things that would directly impact me if I were to be chosen for this position. And it would give me an opportunity to utilize that education and the experience that I have moving forward. I really want to put on in your mind the importance of people and the beliefs and that I have in this community. If you take anything away from the 10 minutes that we've been given to talk, and as you can tell, I'm a little bit nervous, so I do apologize. I want you to understand that I truly believe in people. This is not about me. This isn't about me putting something on my resume. This isn't something about me wanting to pad my ego or anything like that. I've served this community because I want to serve the community. I've wanted to step outside of who I am because I believe in the community and I believe in the people that are in it. And that's who I am. That's who I am down to the core. I believe in being a servant leader. I believe in people, and I believe in this community. And because of that belief, I want to have an opportunity to continue to serve. And if you are gracious enough to give me that opportunity, I promise I won't let you down. But most importantly, I promise to the people, the constituents, that I would answer to them and answer every question that they had, that I would listen to them openly and honestly and give an opportunity to provide them feedback and give me feedback as to how I can do my job better as a city council member. And most importantly, I want to know where they stand on the issues. It's not about me making a decision. It's about where do they stand on the issues? Because isn't that really what we're here for? Aren't we representatives of the people? It's not our decision. It's really their decision. They're the ones providing us with input, asking us, you know, we the people. And that to me is important. It is important. So I thank you so much for your time. I apologize about being a little bit nervous. I didn't think it was going to be this intimidating, but it kind of is. So I definitely apologize, even though I know a few of you in here. Just go with your gut. It doesn't matter if someone's been on city council or not. Go with your gut. People want leaders that care about them. People want leaders that are going to listen to them. And people want leaders that are going to care about them. And I know who I am, and that's who I am. So thank you for your time. I very much appreciate it. And I know that you have a tough choice ahead. So I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon O'Quinn.
Hi there. Thank you so much for letting me do this. I'm going to go through and just kind of ask myself the question and then answer it. Explain why you want to serve on the city council. So I didn't even consider it until I had a few city council members encourage me to throw my application in. And then I started thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yeah, this kind of makes sense. I've lived in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Denver. I was raised in Wyoming, but did move away. And when my son was born, I had the opportunity to move and really set up a home base. And it was a no-brainer. I wanted to move back to Casper. I love Casper. I think it's old-fashioned and kind of weird. It's made up of honest and hardworking people, and I love that about Casper. There are some things that hold Casper back, that it doesn't move forward like I believe it should. Over the summer, I was lucky enough to hear Justin Nelson speak from the NGLCC, and he said, you know, because he spoke directly about Wyoming and tourism and LGBTQ topics. One of the things he said is kids that are graduating from college and high school are moving away. They're taking their ideas and their innovation and they are moving out of Wyoming because they want to be in a place that has that progressive feel. Now, I believe there are ways to keep everything unique about Casper and you know, that old-fashioned, safe feel that we all just love, that makes it so special. I think there's ways to move it forward and have it be a more progressive town that will see that tourism, that will make people want to stay here. And that is what's important to me. And that's a perspective that I think I bring that could be utilized. Describe your qualifications. So my qualifications are probably a little bit different. I'm a graphic designer. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I've worked with Coca-Cola, AT&T, NBC, CNN, the Atlanta Braves, Denver Nuggets, Solomon Skis. I've had a really great career that I'm very fortunate for. I, like Wes, consider myself a creative problem solver. People come to me and they say, this isn't working, or I'm not reaching this audience, or how can we spin this so it comes out this way? And I take all of their concerns and I'm able to look at it and offer up ideas. Now, when I hand my work back, I usually give options and ideas. And what's interesting about my job is 90% of it is criticism. People write me back and say, I hate this, change that, move this, I don't like this. And I am able to take that all in, look at it from a different angle, change things up, and represent the idea until we get to a place that is working for everyone, aesthetically pleasing and what they like. So I'm very good at taking criticism. I'm good at working with people, and I'm good at listening. So while my qualifications are a little bit different than what you're seeing from others, I do think I have some that would be a benefit. So issues that I've been following. I'm a very honest person, and so I'm going to be honest about this question as well. I don't keep up with the council's agenda, from week to week. What I do is I read a lot, and I read a lot of headlines, and I pull in the stuff that's interesting to me. I look at the things that I'm passionate about or that affect me, and so those are the topics that I read, and usually it's done through social media and news. However, you know that what's near and dear to my heart is the inclusion work that we're doing on the Inclusion Committee, which I'm a part of. Are you willing to run for re-election? I look at this as a great way to test drive that chair. Finishing out this little term, I think it's a good way to see if it's a good fit for me. And if I fit in, if you think I'm a good fit. And if that's the case and if it feels right, hell yeah, I would run for re-election in a second. Tell us about your availability and your time to serve. So I own my own business, and so that's no problem. But this is probably what weighed on my mind most before I put my application in. I am a single mother of an adorable 5-year-old, and doing this job would mean that one night a week I'd be away from him. And there would be nights that I would miss soccer games. And there would be times that he may not feel well and want his mom at home. And I would have to leave. And I thought a lot about this. This was, again, what held me back the most from just immediately submitting that application. What I realized was the benefits of my little boy getting to watch his mom dress up and go do something she's passionate about and something she believes in, something that gives back to our community that we both love, much outweighs those few moments each week, or that I would have to give up. And so I am putting my application in with my full heart, and while this would all be very new to me, I'm willing to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. The next we have on go-to meeting. And I really would like to say the name, but I'm going to say Miss Quest on this. How did you say it? Jaela.
Yeah.
Quest.
Yeah.
Jaela Quest. All right.
Thank you. That was perfect. Would somebody perhaps give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You are all very tiny on my screen, and I'm sure I'm quite large on yours. So, to the members of the council, our mayor, manager, and the Casper community, I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to give my statement virtually this evening. As was mentioned, my name is Jaela. I was born and raised in Casper. I attended elementary school at Southridge Elementary, junior high at CY, and high school at NC. My relationship with the Casper community is literally lifelong. I have seen it struggle and grow, and over the course of the past decade in particular, I have been so proud and excited about all of the intentionality and determination on behalf of the Casper community to make this a family-oriented place to live and work. When I left Wyoming to go to school, I was not sure that I would come back. It wasn't necessarily a matter of whether I wanted to or not. I thought the chances were slim because I knew, as so many others do, that my job opportunities were limited. This is a familiar challenge to many of us who have had to make the choice between a career and our families, whether as a child or a parent. It continues to be a tremendous challenge, as others have already mentioned. When I chose a degree in international relations and then followed that up with a master's in international security, I figured it would never happen. Thankfully, the internet and virtual meetings make that slim chance a more plausible reality, which is why I'm able to interview for this position tonight. I think we can be creative about broadening opportunities for professionals who want to live and work in Casper, and I think I can be part of that creative problem solving. My path to this moment is unusual, but it offers a very unique perspective and skill set. In my profession, I look at opportunities for strengthening global governance to prevent the worst forms of identity-based mass violence, genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. I have always believed that when all individuals feel safe and welcome in a community, it benefits everyone. But what I know now is that this is not a belief, it's a fact. It's proven that communities that invest in their people, protect them, provide a variety of economic opportunities, give them equal access to services and justice, they have better indicators for peace and prosperity. Those are the communities where people want to live and work. For these reasons, I am so thrilled to see the Council's united support for the City of Casper to support legislation that would establish a Wyoming missing persons database. I also think it is critical that the Council supports ordinances that offer stronger protections for people facing discrimination in housing, the workplace, and in life in general in our community. And I think the Casper Safe Place program is a wonderful idea that elevates the private sector's role alongside government in fostering a safer environment for all. The truth is that the more I looked at, lived in, and explored the world, the more I have turned toward home. Through my work, I have been so lucky to engage with government officials, academic experts, and representatives from civil society from all over. I have organized small convenings and large global conferences, all focused on creating space for dialogue and exchange. I create agendas and have led discussions on challenging issues, like how hate speech is a strong indicator of violence to come, and what governments can do to assess the likelihood of violence more broadly. And regardless of who is sitting in the room in these discussions, they almost always come back to what is happening at the local level. These global problems don't start out there. They begin here at home. They start on our streets, in our classrooms, in our coffee shops and boardrooms. They start when some aren't seen as equal, when communities become divided along ideological lines, and when the majority stops looking out for the minority. I am worried that these trends are present in our community, and I want to do everything I can to stop and reverse them. So yes, I have strong critical thinking and problem-solving skills. I can manage large project budgets. I am very organized, and I'm good at getting things done. But more than all of this, I have really started to see my own responsibility as a citizen and as a member of the community, and I want to dedicate more of my time and abilities to serving here in Casper. I also know that when women have more opportunities for leadership, that's a good sign of a strong, resilient community. And you've seen my resume. I do not shy away from challenges. In fact, I embrace them. But let me tell you something. Everything I have accomplished professionally was a cakewalk compared to motherhood. So I didn't list those skills in jest. I know how to have difficult conversations, whether with an elected official, a community member, or a 3-year-old. I know how to witness and appreciate the beliefs and perspectives of another individual, even if I disagree. I understand what is important to families as they consider where to send their children to school, whether their children are safe, where they will play, and what opportunities are provided as they grow. I think we need more moms in leadership positions, and I can't expect others to do it if I'm not willing to do it myself. So all of this has really made me reflect on the choices I make in my personal life, which is why I have entered as a candidate today. I would fill this position as a woman who is open to having difficult conversation, who asks the right questions, and who sees the humanity in another, regardless of their perspective. I would be willing to run for re-election in 2022, and I foresee no challenges in meeting and fulfilling the meeting and time requirements of this position. I very much appreciate your consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. John Minchow.
Excuse me. I've been a resident in this town for 69 years. I was born and raised here. I've seen this town grow. I've seen it go through tough times and everything. With the times that we're going through right now, the reason I want to be here is I think it's everybody with these times needs to support the city or what they can do in the community. And recently with a job change at the place I work, I used to work shift work and it would have been hard for me to do this, but I've been working shift days now since January, and I've been encouraged by friends and neighbors to ask me if I would run, and I couldn't do it in the last election, but I can do this, and I plan on doing it in the future, in the next election. I have my experience at work. I've been in management there since 1979. I've been involved with several projects up in the millions of dollars for turbine overhauls, and I've written the scopes of work. I've done the projects, I've run them and watched budgets and everything like that. I've been in charge of what we call our utility crew, which includes the fleet management of all the heavy equipment, trucks, vehicles, and any of the mobile equipment we have. I've done the budgeting and planning for that. I know what the concerns are for the city, the different departments. I take care of right now, I'm maintaining the water system treatment for the plant, and also the waste disposal treatment at the plant. And I'm familiar with how they work, not in the grand scale that the city has, but I know basically how they work. I think that there's going to be some hard decisions coming up with the economic times that we have, like some people have said before with COVID, and also the downturn in minerals and coal and things. And there's going to have to be some hard decisions made. And I hope with my experience at budgets and everything like that, that I can help make a team decision for what we have to do. There's going to be hard decisions made. I do, and about running, I would run again. I see that this would be, and I think it would be a good experience. I think it'll take a while since I've never done anything like this before, but to get my feet on the ground and be able to really do a good job. I'm a fast learner on doing things like this. As far as my work goes, before I even even last year when people were asking me, I talked to my employer about running for the city council and also for the, and when this come up. And they are more than willing to give me any time that I need to come to meetings, be on committees, or whatever is needed. They'll make sure that I'm available to come down here and be on this. And and as far as the commitment, I've worked for the Rocky Mountain Power now at the power plant for 50 years. I've done all different jobs. I've been the head of operations and dealt with difficult situations. I've been on both sides of the union and management. I know, been in negotiations, and I know there's always a give and take and what will come out best for both parties and stuff like that. So, and I just think that I can bring that kind of experience to the city council, and I hope to bring. I've been committed to my job for 50 years, and I'm a very committed person, and I hope to bring that commitment if you allow me to be here on working with you people, that I'd bring that same commitment to the city council. I'm sorry, I'm not very much of a public speaker or anything, but that's about what I have. Thank you for considering.
Thank you. Okay, this concludes the interviews, and we thank all of our applicants for your participation. And I will now call the September 14th, 2021 Special Council meeting to order. Would Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, we have deliberated on a personnel matter before us in executive session. In the executive session, there was a motion and a second to that motion to adjourn the executive session and reconvene our special council meeting called tonight. The motion passed, and I call the special session of the Casper City Council back to order. At this time, I would advise the council that the floor is open for any additional comments and or motions following our executive session. Councilman Nell.
I would like to thank, the entire council would like to thank all of the folks who took the time out of their busy schedules and cleared them in order to be able to serve and to put in their applications. We had a very difficult time because there were a tremendous amount of very good applicants. So it's not a reflection on anyone. We just chose one we thought will fit well with us, but we sure just really want to thank everyone for applying.
Councilmember Pollock.
Like to echo that. So many folks who are willing to step up and serve in local government. It's so important, as so many of you mentioned tonight. So thank you for your willingness to do that. And also, just to note that there are lots of other ways to stay engaged and stay involved. So if you do not end up being appointed to this seat, I hope that you'll look for other committee positions or ways to stay involved to continue to further the goals that we all have for the city of Casper. So thank you so much for your time and for your comments today. And that's all.
Good. Anybody else?
Mr.
Councilman Captain.
The one thing I would like to say to the candidates who were not selected tonight is I wound up being reappointed to council, and when that happened, there were 13 of us that were applicants, and every one of them said that they would be willing to run for re-election and that they were very interested. And when it came up election time last year, yeah, it was last year, not a one of them put their name in. I would encourage the 9 that were not selected tonight to please put in your applications to run for the open council seat when it comes available. You've expressed the interest. I would encourage you to keep on and not just let it drop because you didn't get the appointment tonight. That's the one thing I would encourage. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. After deliberating this matter and considering the great number of applicants and the excellent quality of the applicants for the position of Ward 1 City Council member, the chair would entertain a motion to appoint Jaela Quest. You guys have been messing with me on this name, to fill the open city council position as council member for Ward 1.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pacheco, second by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion or comments prior to voting on the motion? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
On behalf of the City Council, I congratulate Jaela Quest on her appointment to fill the Ward 1 council member vacancy. We welcome you and look forward to working with you. City Council thanks all the applicants for their interest in the position. I encourage you to seek opportunities for public service and involvement in the community. Council appreciates the amount of interest in this vacancy as demonstrated by the number of applicants. This was a difficult decision because in the end we dislike to limit participation of those wishing to serve their community, but again, we hope you endeavor to continue that pursuit. Do any council members have any comments they would like to make? Okay. The next meeting of the City Council will be a regular council meeting held at 6 p.m. September 21st, 2021 in the council chambers where the newly appointed council member will be sworn in. The next scheduled work session will be held at 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. And so now we'll do it around the table. At this time, we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. Councilman Nell.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councilman Cathy.
Nada.
Councilmember Pollock.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilwoman Ingebretson. Councilman Johnson.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Gamros, okay. Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Well, I'm going to say something. Where did I go? This past weekend, I did the kinship program, did a proclamation for them up at the event center during the Kids Fest up there. And then on Sunday, did a 9/11. There was this gentleman, Daniel Rodriguez, that was a singer from 9/11, came to Highland Park Community Church and said a few words at that event. So it's been a busy week with proclamations and events, but they were all very good and well attended. So, all right, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Carter.